Hello, hello! My name is Callista, and welcome to When the Night Comes, a visual novel dating sim created by Lunaris Games. It was originally released in 2019, and the basic plot summary, as far as I've been led to believe, is that we play as a hunter, someone who has dedicated their life to tracking down and taking out monsters and ghouls that threaten humanity. And we have been invited to the sleepy little town of Lunaris that has recently been rocked by a series of unsolved murders. Now that really piqued my interest. I love visual novels, I love dating sims, but I really love games that put me in a sort of detective role. So I'm really interested to see how these genres blend. Now, technically speaking, I'm not playing the original version of When the Night Comes. You see, in 2021, Lunaris Games put out a free update for the game called the Revamped Edition. You get it? Revamped? Because there are vampires? Lunaris Games likes puns, apparently. And with the Revamped Edition came brand new art, partial voice acting. Gideon Emery is in this game. Gideon Emery, who voices Fenris in Dragon Age 2, is in this game. That's actually how I found out about When the Night Comes. He was tweeting about the character he voices, and I figured, ooh, that actually looks pretty decent. I'm gonna look into that. The game is also very LGBTQ plus friendly, which is always a plus, in my opinion. It features 6 individual romances and 2 polyamorous options, which I think is so cool that they decided to add that. And this, I have to show you this, because this absolutely tickled me. There's a codex! I absolutely love reading codex entries in games, so I'm very excited to get to that. Now, before we jump into a new game, I do have a bit of an admission to make, shall we say. This is a blind Let's Play, except for the first chapter. This is actually the second time I've tried to record this. It's rather embarrassing. I forgot to set OBS going. I played through the first chapter, and I don't know what it was, but somewhere in the back of my mind I was like, I better make sure that OBS is recording, and it wasn't. So the first chapter I've seen, the first maybe 2 minutes of chapter 2 I've seen, but after that, this is a blind Let's Play. So, with that out of the way, let's get started. Tell us your name. Alright then, I know exactly who I want to play as. We are going to be playing Camille. I think that's a very lovely name. I never use my own name in games, no matter the genre. I find it kind of weird to play as myself. It's a little bit too personal, so I always like to create characters, and I will be role-playing. That probably sounds stupid, but I'm a role player at heart. I like getting invested in the story, so let's see how that goes. And as for surname, Abberline. Camille Abberline. That is a reference. Not Camille, but her surname. It's not from any, film or anime, none of that. Chief Inspector Frederick George Abberline of the London Metropolitan Police. He was the officer in charge of the Jack the Ripper investigation. And, this may be bad luck, naming Camille after a guy who failed to bring in a serial killer, but I thought it was a cool reference. Choose your pronouns. She, her, please. When the Night Comes. Very pretty. Department of Enforcement Office of the Lieutenant General. You have been selected for immediate transfer and are authorized to report to the enforcement headquarters in Lunaris, Escria. Please find your mission information and all other relevant documents enclosed. Once the information has been digested, we order that the documents are promptly destroyed. This information is highly classified, as are all details of your relocation. Upon arrival, please report to General Augustus Willenheim. Respectfully, Lieutenant General Harold Addington III. I arrive in Lunaris at dusk. I've been travelling for days. My feet are sore, my eyes tired, and all I can think about is how much I need a damn good sleep. I'm a hunter, and I've been called here by the Lieutenant General of Escria to lead an investigation. The matter is apparently urgent if the rapid way in which I've been summoned is anything to go by. The things that you hear about in ghost stories and fables are all real, and it's my duty, my purpose, to protect humanity from those creatures that go bump in the night. There have been a series of particularly violent murders here in Lunaris lately, and the local enforcers, the agency that oversees us, can't seem to put their finger on who or what the culprit is. I was the most skilled hunter general in the previous town I was assigned to, but I eagerly welcome the change of scenery. Even if it does involve murder and a healthy dose of existential dread. Though, as I sink further into the town, the feeling that washes over me is making me wonder if I made the right choice. As if I even really had one at all. Our lives are bound, and I live to serve. As hunters, we're the only ones equipped to deal with such monstrosities. Plucked from our families at a young age, we're told that we hold an incredibly rare talent, not only in passing the secretive initiation that gifts us with keen senses and empathic abilities, but also in possessing the mental fortitude, intellect, and obedience necessary to ensure our effectiveness and loyalty. Doesn't that just sound so non-suspicious? Doesn't it? That just fills you with, joy and happiness. Totally nothing dodgy going on there. I steel myself and wander aimlessly through the unusually narrow streets, unable to focus on much else other than the thought of a warm meal and a comfy bed. The only thing that distracts me from such thoughts is the way the sky begins to turn an inky, infinite black. Wisps of mist swirl around my ankles, seeping out from every crack and crevice. Flickers of magic are present within the smoky tendrils, and I can't help but wonder if my mind is playing tricks on me. I turn a sharp corner and see people running, scooping up small children, scrambling to get inside. I hear the sound of doors slamming and locking, echoing off of the crooked stonework. Curtains are drawn, windows are closed, and then darkness, the abnormal kind. Although the stars are shining brightly at a glance, and the crescent moon hangs low, neither offer much light. It's unsettling, to say the least. A chill rolls down my spine, and I walk faster, my sore feet continuing their protest. The instincts that have been part of me since my initiation kick in, and I have a feeling deep in the pit of my stomach that I need to get inside, and fast. I spot a mage-light lantern as I head further down the street. The dull blue flame flickers invitingly in the darkness, drawing me in. I push the weathered wooden door open, and the light tinkle of the bell that hangs above my head announces my presence. It's empty, only very dimly lit by a few worn-down candles. The shelves are stocked with curious trinkets and jars of strange-looking ingredients and potions, and an apparently endless collection of dusty old books lines the walls. It smells faintly of incense and a little of... Is that ozone? Yes. Like the way the air smells just before a storm. Like lightning. I hear footsteps and turn to find their owner, and I'm taken aback by the figure that appears from behind a pair of well-placed curtains.
I was just closing up, but can I help you?
Maybe you can, sir. I'ma just grab that for thumbnail purposes. Wide eyes burn into me, brighter than the clearest of emeralds. His aura feels distinctly magical, and I'm very aware that I'm looking at a witch. A powerful one at that. I'm sorry to intrude, but I appear to be a little lost. I'm looking for the tavern. His gaze falls to my weapons and my sash, his cheeks darkening as realization apparently sets in.
Are you the new hunter?
I offer him a wry smile. Is it that obvious? He returns my smile, and I can't help but feel welcome. At home, even.
Oh, just a little. It's lovely to meet you. The town has been alight with gossip about you this week, you know. My name is Ezra, by the way.
Oh, it's lovely to meet you too, Ezra, even if it is for the second time. I'm Camille. It's nice to meet you, Ezra.
Did anyone happen to tell you not to wander the streets when darkness falls? As capable as I'm sure you are, it's not advised. Especially these days.
Yeah, wandering around in the dark when there's a serial killer on the loose, that does not sound smart. I shake my head, still a little out of sorts from the long journey. Then, much to my embarrassment, my stomach decides to grumble loudly. Oh, fuck. I had this exact same conversation in the lost episodes. Oh, how... I don't have many guy voices. I don't have any that are good, but like, oh, he's American. How rude of me. You must be starving. Take a seat in the back room and I'll quickly fix you something up. You really don't have to do that. I'd better be on my way.
You'll do no such thing. It's too dangerous out there. Please, I insist. It's no trouble, really.
Oh, what a sweet guy. I can hardly refuse when he's looking at me like that. I nod and follow him as he parts the curtains to reveal a cozy living space. There's a small kitchenette with a crooked dining table, and nestled in the corner is a tattered but comfy-looking sofa. Ezra fills an old steel kettle and pops it on the stove, igniting the stubborn burner with a grunt before he turns and offers me a smile.
I'm just going to pop upstairs and get you some blankets. I really do insist you stay until morning. You must be exhausted, and I'd hate to send you out into the darkness knowing there is a highly proficient killer on the loose. If none of their hunters could deal with it, then that doesn't exactly... I'm not going to say it speaks badly for their capabilities as hunters, but like, more so it says that this killer, whoever they are, whatever they are, is highly proficient. He pauses, stopping himself. Just wait here, and please, make yourself comfortable.
I can think of nothing worse than even walking across the street right now, let alone across town, so I swallow a polite protest. Thank you, Ezra. He disappears up a narrow staircase, and my curiosity instantly gets the better of me. A solitary candle burns upon the countertop. Colourful, magical little lights hanging from various picture frames and shelves, as well as an abundance of luscious green plants. It's utterly enchanting, just like its owner, and obviously very well loved. There are generous amounts of personal belongings and keepsakes littering every possible nook, and I eye a tiny dish, There will be occasional tongue fumbles. I apologise in advance. Let me try that sentence again. There are generous amounts of personal belongings and keepsakes littering every possible nook, and I eye a tiny dish that's overflowing with brightly coloured jewellery. Beside it sits a pile of crumpled parchment. Some of the pages are covered in an elegant, looping script, and others are filled with lovingly rendered portraits. I tentatively reach for one of the sketches at the top of the pile, but a loud creak startles me. I turn, as alert as I've always been taught to be as my fingers edge towards my weapon. The hairs on the back of my neck stand to attention, and I immediately know that there's a creature nearby. That's when I see them. A pair of glowing, fierce golden eyes peeking up at me from a previously hidden hatch in the floorboards, and before I can even think about defending myself, I'm pinned to the wall by a firm, cold, and inherently not human arm. We're only like 5 minutes in and we're already pinned up against a wall. Hey, nice. Camille works quick.
Who the hell are you? Where is Ezra?
Hey, Gideon. You doing alright? His lips curl into a snarl, affording me what feels like an incredibly pointed view of a pair... It's Gideon Emery. He gets me flustered. What can I say? I'm too much of a fangirl. Okay, let's try that again. His lips curl into a snarl, affording me what feels like an incredibly pointed view of a set of long, sharp fangs. If I hadn't already clocked his deathly pallor, there'd be no second guessing what kind of creature I'm dealing with here. Vampire. I know I'd already be quite dead if that was what he truly wanted, and I feel nothing from him other than an overwhelming desire to protect something. Or someone. His aura is panicked but distinctly non-threatening, so I decide to relax against his hold. I cautiously raise my hands in surrender in the hopes that he'll stand down. We're not taught to harm creatures who have no intent to harm us. It isn't what we stand for. At least, not the honourable hunters. Plus, vampires are the closest thing there is to humans in the Demonology Handbook, and I've met a few reasonable ones in my time. Emphasis on a few. He retreats a little, just as I'd hoped, just enough for me to gather my composure. Tell him Ezra is safe, ask him who he is. We want to de-escalate this. Also, I will be picking the exact same options as I picked the first go around. I like explaining my thoughts. I want to tell you about the character I'm playing and all of that. Yeah. We don't just want to be like, who the hell are you? I asked you where Ezra was. I asked you who you were. Like, it's just gonna make things worse. Camille, she's clearly very sarcastic. Like, I've picked that up, you know, from the dialogue that she's been kind of spewing out. And I think she does like a joke. However, when it's time to work, when things are serious, then, you know, I think she's going to try and de-escalate situations. She's going to be very serious and composed. When she's, you know, off duty, jokes ahoy. But right now, we've got a very pissed off vampire. We don't want to make that worse. Ezra is fine. I swear it. Those bright, disarming eyes burn into my own, a chill skittering over my skin. He looks like he's searching for something, his dark brows twitching as he studies my face, a thick scar cutting through the one on the right. Something that looks a lot like relief settles upon his face. I can't help but wonder what a vampire is doing sneaking into Ezra's home at this hour.
If you're playing tricks on me, I'll have your head. Understand?
He sounds so threatening, but also so sexy. Why? I nod once, my hands still raised where he can see I mean him no harm. I'm not lying. He's safe. He's upstairs. I tip my chin towards the staircase in the hope that he'll use his head and seek Ezra out with those impressive senses of his. He takes a step back, but he still doesn't seem to trust me. I don't entirely blame him. I know how he feels. The sound of the kettle whistling as it comes to a boil distracts him, and he visibly relaxes. His gaze quickly darts to the staircase, then back to me. He steps back, the candlelight illuminating his angular face, all sharp lines and hair as black as the night. He's otherworldly, obviously attractive in that tall, dark and dead way, and his left arm is missing from the shoulder down. In its place is an advanced-looking prosthetic, flowing with what looks like incredibly advanced magic. He catches me looking at it and quirks that scarred brow.
Like what you see? Sorry, it's not for sale.
I'm gonna have such a problem not immediately going for this guy. Oh, why? Ezra appears from upstairs, his eyes wide as he surveys the sight before him.
Finn? What are you doing here?
Iron fingers curl around Ezra's forearm, almost as though he's just checking he's real. His prosthetic thrums brightly, as if it's responding to the touch. I can't match Gideon Emery's skills. I can't do that. I sensed that you felt uneasy. I came immediately. Are you okay? Ezra smiles, covering Finn's hand with his own to gently pat it. A reassuring gesture. The intricate patterns etched into the dark iron pulse like a heartbeat. I was only very briefly startled by the appearance of our new friend here. Right. Finn turns to me and dips his head in an apology.
I'm sorry about that less than savory introduction, Hunter. Things are a little on edge here lately.
I'd never have guessed. Ezra shakes his head, clearly amused by my sarcasm.
I'm fine. You really don't need to jump every stranger that passes this way.
Every stranger? Finn, you need to chill out. That final reassurance seems to make the tension melt from Finn's broad shoulders. Sorry, Camille, you don't need to be alarmed. He's an ally, I swear it. Even if he doesn't give the best first impression. Finn offers me a genuine, almost soft smile, but he looks guilty. As he should, I suppose. I catch Ezra eyeing me warily, clearly sensing my apprehension. It isn't like it's every night you find yourself in a magic shop staring at a witch and an apparently friendly vampire. Finn's whole demeanour changed the second he laid eyes on Ezra, and I feel any final traces of fear melting away as he steps forward and offers me his hand. I'm guessing this is one of the polyamorous options. I'm assuming it is. I couldn't identify the other pairing. To be fair, there weren't, this is kind of spoilers for the rest of Chapter 1, there weren't any other scenes that I can remember that had two characters in them, so I couldn't really get a gauge on anyone's chemistry. However, I would put money on Finn and Ezra being an item. The smile that crosses his lips is mischievous, and cold fingers grip my own in a firm handshake when I reach for him.
It's truly a pleasure to meet you.
His pretty eyes brush over me like a caress, his pupils dilating, and I feel myself swaying, leaning towards him almost unconsciously. There's a soft whisper of muffled thoughts echoing in my mind, and I can't quite tell if they belong to me or him. It's soothing. And whatever he's doing grants me the foresight to see that he most certainly is harmless, that he bears no ill will towards me. Something tells me he now sees I'm harmless too.
Finnegan, stop that. It's not polite.
Finn closes his eyes briefly, breaking whatever connection he's created with me, and he offers me a killer smile. Literally. Shit, those fangs are really no joke. He must be pushing at least 5 centuries. I've heard of vampires enthralling their victims before a kill, but that felt more like a request to be understood. Like he wanted to show me he can be trusted. He exchanges an almost sheepish, knowing glance with Ezra, and I quickly feel my mind clearing itself. It's interesting to see such a powerful creature wither under a witch's gaze. Sorry, I'm just checking. He looks at me and our eyes lock. I nod once, appreciating that he cared enough to put me at ease. Then he's grinning again, wickedly. I hope he didn't hear anything untoward in there. Anyway... Ezra fusses with the kettle, pouring me a cup of fragrant tea and offering it to me on a pretty floral saucer. Ooh! I do like me some florals. Here, this will help you get a good night's sleep. I take the cup with a nod, both of them staring intently as I take a small sip. It's good, refreshing, and exactly what I need. So, Camille, are you looking forward to becoming part of this Ow! Ezra elbows him in the ribs, throwing him a stern warning glance, and Finn flinches a little too dramatically for a big scary creature. Lovely town.
Do you have any idea what you've gotten yourself into?
Nope. Is it really that bad? I like a little adventure. I went with, is it really that bad? First time around, because it's a series of murders. You know, like, yeah, there's joking and being cocky and like, oh, like, you can trust me, like, I'm really cocky, therefore I know what I'm doing. Like, there's that, but people have died. People have lost their lives. Family members have lost loved ones, you know. And to be honest, I don't have any details on the crimes. I don't know how many victims there have been. I don't know the manner in which they were killed. And presumably Camille doesn't know that either. I'm assuming, like, if I don't know it, she doesn't know it. So, you know, maybe we were led to believe that, like, oh, it's just some murders. Just some murders, and it's like, oh yeah, we found them hanging, eviscerated from the trees, and it was really fucked up. Like, are things really that bad? I think it would be good to gauge how the town is feeling. And the local witch and a friendly vampire might be able to tell us that. Oh, it can't be that terrible. Can it? The way Ezra looks at me makes me feel almost pitied. Concern etched on his face.
Well, it's certainly not been sunshine and roses around here lately.
Ooh. Understatement of the century. I'll figure it out. Whatever it is.
My clan and I are at your disposal, should you require any assistance.
Thank you, sir. Clan? He nods, but I decide not to press him for details. Yet. I'd definitely like to know how many supposedly good vampires reside here in Lunaris. I offer them both a smile and finish up my tea. Ezra hurries to take the empty cup from me and sets it upon the table. He places his hand upon Finn's arm. Finn, Camille needs to rest. Maybe you should head home? Finn nods, and Ezra follows him as he heads for the hatch. They embrace briefly, and Finn whispers something into Ezra's ear, the witch grinning brightly as he pulls away. Then Finn's warm golden gaze locks with my own, and he smiles.
Be sure to take care. If you ever need anything, just scream, and I'll come running.
That is both completely terrifying and heartwarming. Because it's like, oh, if we need him, he's just like a call away. But the way he said it, just scream. Why would we be screaming? Why would we be screaming, Finn? What do you know that we don't? He winks, and my traitorous cheeks threaten to warm at the sight of it. He notices and laughs quietly. A deep, comforting rasp that I could most certainly find myself getting used to. It was nice to meet you, Finn. Finn gracefully lowers himself into the hatch, and Ezra stares into the darkness until the door slams shut. He turns and retrieves a tin of biscuits from a cupboard, offering them to me and waiting expectantly until I take a handful.
Please don't let our apprehension worry you. I'm sure you're more than capable of getting to the bottom of all this. Some are saying the town has been cursed, but I sense something else. Something bigger.
Also worrying, considering that he's a witch. And I don't know how powerful witches are in this setting, but the fact that he senses something bigger than a curse, I'm like, ooh, that's bad. Well, it's always a terrible night for a curse. Even though we've only just met, I feel like I can trust him. Within moments of my arrival, I could tell that something about this town is off, and I intend to get to the bottom of this mess. I have to live up to my apparently impressive reputation, right?
We've lost people, good people, and the investigation seems to have just halted. We don't know what more we can do.
Maybe it's just that they need a pair of outside eyes. If this town is as small as I think it is, presumably everyone knows everyone, so maybe the local enforcers and hunters, they're just too emotionally involved, so they needed someone who was an outsider who could look at things objectively, maybe?
Ugh. Look at me getting all emotional when you're probably dead on your feet and desperate to get some sleep.
He quickly gathers himself, forcing a laugh to break the somber mood. Thank you for letting me stay, Ezra. I'll be out of your hair first thing. I stifle a yawn as Ezra turns to fuss with some blankets. I'm thoroughly looking forward to settling upon the sofa, however tiny it may be.
Really, it's no problem at all. Wouldn't dream of letting you wander the streets at this hour, especially after that journey. I'll see you in the morning. If you need anything, just shout.
He heads upstairs and I eagerly remove my boots. The relief is instant when I settle against the cushions, pulling the soft blanket up to my chin. Despite the abundance of questions that currently flood my mind, I swiftly fall into a blissful, dreamless sleep. Hello there, editing Callista here. So it turns out that the codex entries were a lot longer than I first thought they were gonna be. So rather than having one big chunk of them at the end of each chapter, I'm gonna have a couple of codex entries at the end of each episode. So hope you enjoy them. The Hunter Academy. How much or how little the Academy has in the way of comfort is dependent on the city-state it belongs to. After all, its overseers are the local Special Command sect, and if they happen to be under a particularly stringent Major General's heel, well, tough shit, kids. All training facilities for initiates are built like a small town, however, with a large building at the centre where indoor classes are provided. Student housing takes up at least a third of the school ground, often divided up into houses of 6 inhabitants. The other 1/3 is outdoor training grounds, and there is usually a patch of closely guarded forest for Capture the Flag. Wards, provided by witches, hang heavy around each academy, to both keep the students in and to keep bad things out. No one knows who exactly oversees these wards, and whether or not it's the same person, but in the past 100 years, there have been very few incidents where something major manages to slip past these shields. Of course, unfortunate things happen. You can't cure stupid. But parents and loved ones who care are assured, honestly, that all efforts were taken to prevent hormonal, aggressive, overconfident teenagers to actually die from their own foolishness. Typically, Hunter initiates taken from a city-state or the surrounding areas end up in their local academy, but this is not always the case. Special command officers handle most of the recruitment effort, but by a hunter's vouch, any child can also be eligible to participate in the initiation ceremony. Should they pass, the hunter in question has claims as to where they will go, and many will take the child with them to the school closest to their home location. One-on-one apprenticeships or sponsorships of this kind were once the norm, and though its integration into the official government has forced the Hunter Corporation to be more even-handed and general in its instruction of its initiates, enforcers make the effort to preserve some aspects of old traditions out of respect. The only way to control rambunctious 12 to 18-year-olds known to any adult is to keep them busy, something which Hunter instructors do well. Nor can it be said they only give out work as busy work. At the age of 18, before being cleared to leave the compound, a trainee is expected to be the fittest of their age group in one aspect or another, in all aspects if possible, so they stand a chance against the worst possible way for things to go wrong. Creature lore, habits, and victim patterns are a must. Demonology is a subject of its own, so extensive are the abyssal denizens, as are a study of plants and alchemy, for hunters are expected to use, if not make, many concoctions in their hunts. Intelligence gathering, crowd control, and so on are also part of an expansive and rigorous curriculum. For the most part, all recruits are trained the same. Specialization begins at 16, and if by 18 overseers see a particular promise in an initiate's pursuit, the initiate might spend the next few years of their official on-duty time devoted to a deeper study of a subject. Most will go on to fight, whether or not they are well suited for it, because that is where their unnatural strength and creature senses see the most use. Although contact with people outside of the facility is severely limited until 18 years of age, from 16 years old onwards, students are semi-regularly taken out of the school and into nearby wilderness for hunting assignments that are closer to the real thing. Siblings are usually kept together for their schooling, but are then split up post-graduation and sent elsewhere. Those with strong ties of friendship or otherwise are also split up at the overseer's discretion. This is solely to avoid the hunters letting emotion get the better of them in the field, as earlier history had shown that those paired with friends or loved ones often ended up dead, and much faster than they normally would with such a perilous occupation. Where the climate is favourable, it is not unusual for an academy to also have ranches and farms that supply food directly for the residents and students. Field trips in these places are common, as sending senior students to fetch shipments and so on are excellent simulations for bodyguard assignments later on. Witches. Witches are, in short, a curious phenomenon. There is no clear start to the origin of witches, but they appear to have existed as long as time can tell. There have been numerous accounts of strange incidents with seemingly no explanation as to why lightning would quite literally strike a home more than twice with almost ill intent, or why another town would find their crops flourishing during each harvest while others perished. Unexplained stories such as these were abundant in number in the time before Revelation Day, but have since become more refined in their details. Now the world has finally come to learn the source of these strange, supernatural occurrences: witches. All known witches to this day are found to be wholly human in origin. They appear as any other would, and while some may present themselves in more grand terms, they are unidentifiable in a crowd of people. They have no obvious markers that dictate their differences, but some people have reported detecting what feels like a missing pressure or shift in aura when finding themselves in close proximity with a suspected witch. There are, of course, varying degrees in which this is experienced, typically with how experienced the witch is at masking their power or by how powerful that individual may be. It's when a witch uses their powers that they become more distinctive, performing magnificent displays from weather control to telekinesis, control over the elements to healing of wounds far too dire for typical medical practices. They have been subject to much discrimination due to harnessing such powers, and were historically feared thanks to early depictions of witches being compared to being ascendant in nature. While demons are clearly labelled as denizens of the burning plains, witches have been described as being the opposite, and some even say as angels. While witches live a typical lifespan as humans do, their bodies are notably more resilient. Part of their coined angelic nature is that they are not receptive to corruption or bodily changes. It's common knowledge that witches are unable to become hunters, and this is due to their inability to successfully partake in the hunter initiation. Hunters become hunters through a literal change to their bodies, and the biology of the witch refuses that. Much like a T-cell would react to an infection, it rejects that which would alter them in any sense. This, in turn, means that witches can also not become vampires or lycans. A bite from a vampire intending to turn them, or an attack from a lycan, means certain death for a witch. Early attempts to turn a witch into a hunter have gone time and time again with failure, and thus the practice has not been used since. Though some late-blooming witches whose powers have not yet manifested have been rumoured to attempt to partake in the initiation, and subsequently suffering terribly when their bodies reject whatever concoction they've been given. However, some willing witches are inducted as enforcers instead, their capabilities too valuable for the enforcement agency to disregard. A witch's blood is a powerful thing, and, as with power, it is also the font to their abilities. It is a common belief within Escria that there is no higher power, but with the presence of witches and their almost divine-like ability, they are something far more complicated than we could ever dream to understand. Further reasoning of the idea is that their source of power is derived from their blood and that alone. There are reports of deceased witches, both malicious and benevolent, who have met a quick end by their own doing. The common trend shared between the deceased individuals has been their consistent use of their powers, and them having overextended that to the point of exhaustion and, finally, death. A witch can recover from their own self-destruction by better controlling their abilities and limiting the use of them, but from this we can certainly ascertain that their source of power is linked to their own life force. Practices and development have been put into place by the enforcement agency to stem these casualties, and to instead nurture them and keep them as healthy as possible. Witch children were more common in the earlier days, but with unions between them and humans increasing, their numbers have dwindled. A dilution of their breeding, as one might put it. Families that consist of 2 witch parents are guaranteed to have a witch child, but between a human and witch, the likelihood is significantly less. Even with predecessors of witch blood, it is not guaranteed to be passed on to a child with human parents. A couple expecting one of these magical offspring would look to find signs of power manifestation around the ages of 6 to 8, but some can wait as late as the time that they hit puberty. With this knowledge in mind, there are couples who have sought each other out with the direct intention of having a pure witch child. The most notable account of this is Lady Adalia and Sir Oberon Willenheim, the founders of the most prestigious witch academy in all of Escria. Like all beings of power, witches are met with both reverence and fear. Revered for their seemingly ascendant abilities in the form of a human being, or wearing their guise to mask their true, sinister nature. Severe under-education of their identity among society created a stark contrast between those who treated them civilly and those who wanted them dead. There have been mass gatherings to burn witches, along with mania surrounding the confusion of who exactly was a witch among them, and those who simply used it as an excuse for murder. While there are known witches who have, as it is often put, gone to covens to consort and dance with the devil. There are those who would meet to simply just be amongst their kind, free of their more wild depictions. Those who extend their powers as services for the betterment of society were those who became, and continue to become, the building blocks of who they are today. Witches that are accepted into towns are typically employed as healers, protectors, instructors, and sometimes even something as simple as a store owner for the local market. Acceptance of their kind eventually blossomed from the good intentions of those who wanted to coexist and assist with their talents, a simple request to live. In conclusion, witches have gone through a curious journey of enduring the madness of the formulaic ages to the glowing era of becoming higher class citizens. They are both demanding figures of respect in society and unbridled power incarnate. It is not unlike their origins, but with a more favourable light in our current hazy world, brimming with mystery and intrigue. Vampires. Vampires have existed since there were humans to inherit their curse, or so says popular convention. More rumours persist in some corners of Escria, especially in cults which worship them, that the original vampires were something wholly inhuman altogether, some immortal, godlike creature born long before the scourge of men, and the threat of extinction forced them to turn these very men into their own kind. Whatever the truth, the enforcement agency ardently reminds the general populace that vampires are one of the most dangerous, yet most common creatures to walk among humans, and that they're predators in the most literal sense. Any average vampire possesses a basic skill set: thrall and superhuman strength and speed. Most vampires have red eyes and ashen dead man's skin, and varying levels of moral conflicts about their natural diet. They usually congregate towards large urban areas where staying hidden is easiest, and where prey was plentiful, but some, like the Casimir clan, have migrated to the countryside. Clan Casimir in particular, and those clans sharing their lack of disgust of hunters and the enforcement in general, were regarded as a strange lot at best, blood traitors at worst, for when creatures were first discovered and humans took up arms against them, they were the first to be hunted. Some argue that they were also the first to be discovered, which is true, but many vampires who lived through Revelation Day were understandably unconvinced. Research from the enforcement agency shows conclusively that the process of becoming a vampire follows an almost ritualistic pattern. This hatched theories that the original condition has roots in an arcane curse, and not merely physical mutation as in the case of lichens. In order to be properly turned, the victim must imbibe vampire blood while on the verge of death. The transformation has been observed to take place after death, twisting the victim's physiology until, should the ritual prove successful, they rise anew, undead. By all gathered accounts, it's a painful and excruciating experience. A vampire always returned in madness and bloodthirst, and unless carefully supervised by their kin or sire, would be driven to kill the first viable meal to cross their path. Sometimes luck would have it be an animal. Most of the time it would be a human. The uncontrollable feeling of starvation would plague a youngling for at least 365 days, after which they could, in most cases, be left on their own. Not all vampires have the fortune of finding a nurturing coven. Enough were turned for spite, then unleashed on the hapless populace for sports, that the Hunter Corporation upheld a kill-on-sight policy for unsupervised younglings in most regions of Escria. They are easily identifiable by their shorter fangs, which don't break through properly until a number of decent feeds, and their unstable, almost animalistic nature. Clans with proper leadership and roots choose members with extreme selectiveness, and some have existed for so long in Escrian myths and history that the mere act of drawing their attention was considered a great honour by fanatics. Unfortunately, these circles don't often make themselves known to the common folk. Hunters and enforcers coexist with them in varying degrees of comfort, as immortality often proves as a breeding ground for inhuman apathy and sometimes cruelty. Still, their subtle influences in human politics can still sometimes be felt. Few allied with mortals are friends with these vampiric aristocrats, and fewer still are willing to talk about any connections with them. What knowledge the aristocracy has relinquished to hunters, however, revealed a structure both ancient and stable, and an unwillingness to challenge status quo. That status quo has kept humans safe for thousands of years, and even the enforcement agency was almost unanimously in favour of respecting it. Who could know what the aristocracy's culture was like? For the run-of-the-mill younger vampires, they were simply products of what they were in life. Many vampires are Arclean by human birth, and some were from the far east or far west, arriving in Escria through either migration or because they were turned here. And I am going to end this episode right here. So, please remember to like if you enjoyed, leave a comment below, and if you wanted to subscribe, it would be very much appreciated. I've been Kallista. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next episode.